Hey guys, David here with my review of the newest episode of The Walking Dead entitled East. Spoilers will follow. And yeah, this episode happened. Here's the deal. So this episode follows the adventures of Carol and her decision to leave Alexandria at the end of last week's episode, which came out of nowhere. And sadly, that decision still feels out of nowhere, despite the fact that they tried to go back just a couple of hours or so where she's still with that guy and she's still affected by what happened with her in the bunker where she's like zoning out completely. And then we see her leave with no explanation still whatsoever. I understand their attempts, but still, she leaves during a montage with Johnny Cash, I'm assuming Johnny Cash, playing, which leads me to another thing. I don't think the Walking Dead writers know how to write sexy because I'm sorry, but it was just weird having Maggie and Glenn taking showers and rubbing each other's backs to Johnny Cash. It's really strange. And then moments later, I mean, sure, there's no Johnny Cash playing, but you got Rick and Michonne in bed. And I understand that in movies and in TV shows, when people wake up in the morning after sleeping for a long time, they don't wake up realistically. They never ever do. They wake up, they're like all that, and that's how Michonne and Rick wake up here. And I understand it's never supposed to be realistic. But who keeps an apple right there so that they can eat in the morning? I mean, I understand it's the apocalypse or whatever, but it's just like, it looked silly to me. It looked really, really silly. Who does that? Now, this apple, let me take a bite out of this apple. And then they share the apple. Like, that's their interpretation of sexy. It's just, no, I'd rather just take the apple out. Take the fucking apple out. Anyways, moving on from that. The episode centers around Carol leaving Alexandria, going off on her own, and Morgan and Rick are the ones who take the responsibility to go find her because they have like the strongest connection to her. Rick knows her the most, while Morgan even mentions that he doesn't know her as much as Rick, but he knows her enough with her conversations and the stuff that they had to do with that wolf in Alexandria episodes back, or last season, or whatever, or the last half of the season. So they go after her, and this episode definitely had some highlights in the two parallel stories, in the two stories that are going on. Rick and Morgan trying to track down Carol, while at the same time, Carol, while Daryl, along with Glenn, Michonne, and Rosita go out because Daryl is that character who's not gonna let the script of the show gonna get in the way. He's like, you know what? I fucked up. I'm gonna go and undo that fuck up. I'm gonna go kill those guys that I should have done a while back. Alright, I'm not gonna just weep here in my sorrows. No, I'm actually gonna go take care of some business. So he goes out there, tries to find the wolves, and in turn they end up, all four of them, being caught by, the saviors. They end up being caught by the saviors, led by Dwight. I'll get to that in a second. Let's go ahead and talk about Carol and Morgan and Rick tailing her. The highlight of the episode for me was that standoff between Carol and the Saviors. Not only is Carol one of my favorite characters, and because of that I was fearing for her safety, but also because it was awesome seeing her do that thing that she did in the bunker once again, where she pretended to be this weak and feeble woman, only to have the upper hand, almost literally, and take down those Saviors all on her own, or most of them. I wish the blocking would have been a little bit better because that gun in her sleeve kind of came out of nowhere. It just showed like that one shot and that's it. It's almost like she wasn't even the one holding the gun. You know what I mean? It was like a stunt double or something like that. But I wish the blocking would have been a little bit better to show how she put that thing in there. But anyways, that's just me. What was cool though is seeing her dispatch those saviors, especially with the one where she took the pole and shoved it through his torso. That was awesome. And so that entire standout was also nerve-wracking, but also the little cliffhanger that we're left with when it came to her story. Where did she go? Is she leaving a trail of blood behind? And is that blood hers? And will Rick and Morgan be able to get, or at least Morgan, going to be able to get to her before that remaining surviving savior does? And that's what leads me to Rick and Morgan, who had a couple of interesting moments here and there, their dialogue, but again, they're retreading certain things. I swear to God, both Morgan and Rick say the exact same thing that they've been saying for the longest time, to the point where they even rehash lines of dialogue. Morgan says, "All life is precious," and then Rick says, "I'm not taking any chances." How many fucking times have we had these characters say the exact same thing in the past season or so? But some interesting things did come out of the team up of these two. I liked that Morgan confessed to Rick that he was harboring a wolf in Alexandria, and I liked Rick's reaction to where, yeah, at first he looked like he was about to get pissed, but then Morgan explained that if it wasn't for that, Denise might have not been alive, and she wouldn't have been able to, at that moment, of course, not right now, but at that moment she wouldn't have been alive, and because of that, Carl wouldn't have been saved by his injury. So Rick puts this together and decides to give him a deal like, okay, you go and find Carol on your own, but please take this gun because I feel like that gun is going to be put to some good use, and I'm interested to see how that plays out in the season finale. So now let's go over to the stuff that happened with Daryl and that group that tailed him. All of them getting somewhat dumbfoundedly caught by the saviors. And I don't know, for some reason I feel like it was very weak how they got caught so easily, considering that Glenn and Daryl and all of them were supposed to be like the alpha team of this entire Alexandria community, yet they got caught super, super easy. But hey, change of pace, because up until this point, the Saviors have been kind of weak as well, so now it's like the tables have turned. So Dwight is indeed coming back with a vengeance. And like I said, I like it that Daryl is that character that says, it's almost like he's not even paying attention to the script of the show. He's like, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to go do my own thing. And I dig that. Like I said, just the way that they got caught was a little weird. And I'm sorry, but I completely get that they're just toying with our emotions once again with that little cliffhanger of Daryl possibly getting shot by that really cheap Adobe After Effects. I'm sorry, but Walking Dead has been known for doing that blood splattering on the camera effect whenever somebody gets killed, somebody gets shot, or somebody gets bitten by a walker or whatever. And sometimes it works, and during those times that it works, it's because they use actual practical blood that sprays on the camera. Don't use an effect. That looked like a very cheap effect. It looked like something that you see in the main title sequence of a James Bond movie. Don't do that. Come on. Especially with a show like The Walking Dead. You guys save a shit ton of money filming in the woods in Georgia over there, and not in the city of Atlanta. I'm pretty sure you've saved up enough money to use some practical effects for that. You know, don't use an effect like that. But I can tell, I don't know why, but I just don't feel any kind of concern for Daryl because I feel like he's going to be fine. In fact, I hear somebody say, don't worry, you're going to be fine. So either Daryl got shot in the shoulder and he's going to be fine and he might survive to the season finale, or Dwight or one of the other saviors was the one that was shot and it was all clear manipulation. What I do find kind of interesting by how this episode ends with the four of them caught is that amongst these four, there's two that I feel are nominated to have a date with Lucille. And I feel personally that it's a toss-up between Glenn and Daryl, as much as you fear for these two characters because they're two big fan favorites. I feel like Daryl and Glenn are the two that might be meeting Lucille in the season finale. So I really hope that after my explanation of these highlights of the episode, you'll start to notice a pattern. And that is this penultimate episode was mostly all set up for the finale. But that's all that it was. Set up. Like all of these little seeds planted that were all pretty much bookended by filler padding. Because in between all these highlights was just a bunch of filler, a bunch of conversations, a bunch of like that stuff with Maggie. I mean, again, another seed planted, almost literally, because her big cliffhanger is having pains in her abdomen from her pregnancy, conveniently right after a haircut to demonstrate her evolution of a character. But anyways. That stuff with Enid, and then just, again, just filler padding here and there to stretch it out to the 42 minutes, because besides all of that, those were the highlights that had me the most interesting out of this episode. So, I'll wrap up by saying that this penultimate episode was so busy trying to set things up for the season finale that it almost forgot that it's also supposed to be an episode of TV. I feel like a penultimate episode is probably the toughest one to write, aside from the season finale, because in the season finale you got a bag of tricks that you're saving up for that explosive finale, that you forget that the penultimate episode the writer was planning all this setup without realizing that this is also an episode. You need to have an arc. You need to have a beginning, middle, and end that has within this episode, not just the beginning of what's going to be the middle and end of the finale. You need to have other stuff, actual stuff happening in the penultimate episode that is exciting, and not just setup, setup, setup. And I feel like that's the mistake that the writers made with this week's episode entitled East. So for that, I give the episode a solid 7 out of 10. I think it could have been better, but again, the biggest problem is that they forgot that this was also supposed to be an entertaining episode of Sunday Night TV, and they completely forgot about that. Still, makes me no less excited for the season finale and the introduction of Negan. So let me know what you guys thought of this week's episode of The Walking Dead, and I'll see you guys next week with my review of the season 6 finale. I'll see you then.